Three frogs in a coat. I love that. I will tell you that two raccoons in a trench coat is a costume I still want to do someday. Three frogs in a coat says, I'm curious about your thoughts on getting a formal education versus on-the-job training when entering a new field. I find that some jobs won't take you on without specific experience. Is school worth it? I can't answer whether school is worth it for you, but I will tell you this, and I've said this before. We encounter school so early that it is just this monolith, right? We encounter school as literal babies and then children, toddlers, and then children, and then young adults. And then we go through, the slog of junior high and high school, and we're supposed to go to college, but it is all just look, at least in the way I grew up. I know that the approach to college has changed culturally, but as I was growing up, it was just this pipeline and you went. Now there's a lot more discussion about taking a gap year between high school and college. I'll get to your question about the trades in a minute, but I feel like this is all germane. Lots of people take gap year. Thing two, one of my sons took a gap year and went and worked production in Los Angeles between graduating from high school and going to college. And that was a spectacular move for him. He got to live as an adult with a job that had to pay rent. He had a roommate. He got the full life experience at 18. And he came back from LA with a 1,000-yard stare. I mean, he had been, raked over the coals as a bottom of the rung film employee on a bunch of independent films. I think that's great. Because when you've had a little life under your belt, I think school means a fundamentally different thing than it does when you're just continuing the pipeline of going from child to young adult to school. So all the things I'm going to say here are around going to school, not as part of that pipeline, but going for a reason. And I'll tell you the story, my wife's story. She went to college and ended up dropping out after a couple of years. Didn't really see what it was doing for her. And then she started watching her peers go on and graduate and move on. And she was working as a waitress and she's like, yeah, I want to get back into this. I think I'm losing time. And when she went back to school, she knew what she was going for. And everybody I've ever met who went back to school knowing what they were going for, none of them ever got anything but an A in anything that they were doing. Because when you're interested in your subject, you're going to do really well at that. I really firmly believe that. So I don't have an answer that I think experiential knowledge on the job is better than school. That is the type of knowledge I have spent most of my life gathering. So I don't think it's proper for me to speak to whether school would work, but I think it absolutely can. And I have another friend who went to MIT, and they were just interested, specifically, they had gotten their master's degree in electrical engineering at Berkeley, and they took a few years, and then they went to MIT. And when they went to MIT, what they knew was they wanted to use all of MIT. They wanted access to as much of this amazing campus as possible. And they chose as their major biomedical engineering, specifically because biomedical engineering gave them access to the largest number of different shop spaces and tools on the campus. I think school absolutely is worth it. Again, if you know what you're going for. There is a really important machine art collective out of San Francisco called Survival Research Labs, started by Mark Pauline. And I remember one of Mark Pauline's main guys showed up having gone to trade school in electrical engineering and then hydraulics, which was like, that kid showed up that grown to work with a machine art collective. So yes, I think that it can be worth it, again, if you know what you want to get out of it. And you set your expectations. I mean, the whole thing of employment requiring specific experience, I tend to think, as I peruse the subreddit anti-work, that there is a little too much dependence on certain kinds of experience and not enough examination of the unique mental frames that people bring to their jobs. Because I have long said that there are people I have met who don't make stuff for a living, who I would hire in a heartbeat to build stuff in this cave on the clock for me, because I just know I know their skill. I can see it in them. And I have met people that I don't think I need them to have any experience at all and know that I could get their brains to work on something in front of me. But now I feel like I'm rambling. It's a lovely question, Three Frogs in a Coat, and an excellent username. Charles M. says, in the myth about the pepper spray catching fire, you talked about taking a home economics class in elementary school. Was there another class that helped you become the maker you are today, such as woodshop? Yes, woodshop, totally. Junior high school shop class was my first experience with a drill press. Art classes were great. And I actually, my first major art teacher was a real character and a real personality. He, God, now I'm probably guessing he was in his 30s. Big guy, 6'2", 6'3", big guy with a big Elvis haircut. Adam Steltzner from Jet Propulsion Labs, another good friend of mine, could be a ringer for my first art teacher. My first art teacher's name, this was from 4th, 5th, and 6th grade at the Morse Elementary School in Tarrytown, New York. Vinny Albano. Vinny Albano was my art teacher. Now, if that last name sounds familiar to the older members of my listeners here, it's because you might remember that Cyndi Lauper used to do videos, and there was this like big bearded guy with rubber bands stuck in his face named Captain Lou Albano. He was Andre the Giant's wrestling promoter. I know, this is all really esoteric, but you remember Andre the Giant from The Princess Bride. So Andre the Giant was a legendary wrestler, and his wrestling promoter manager was Captain Lou Albano, a legendarily famous wrestling promoter. And Captain Lou's brother was my first art teacher. And I remember specifically being in 5th grade, and they were like, hey, today we're gonna do something different in art class. Everyone just gets a blank sheet of paper to draw whatever you want, and then we're gonna have a little contest. And I remember not being involved in the idea of the contest, but I was like, I don't know what to draw. And I'm looking at this blank sheet of paper. Again, it's 5th grade, so what am I, 10? Yeah. Right, 3rd grade, you're 8. 4th grade, you're 9. 5th grade, you're 10. I'm a summer baby, so I was always the right age when I was at school. So I'm looking at this blank piece of paper. I'm 10 years old, and I'm like, oh, I'll just draw this wall. And I started drawing the wall, and at like 40 minutes, they're like, all right, everyone hand in your drawings. And I won that little drawing contest. I did not expect to. I was absolutely shocked. I literally was like, well, I'm just phoning this one in by drawing the first thing I can see. Now I see what Vinny saw. And he was like, he ended up collaborating with my dad on a thing. So he came to the house once, which was really weird, having your elementary school art teacher show up at your house. Felt like, it was like a movie star visiting. It really was. But I got lucky through all of school with some great art teachers. There was my middle school shop teacher, which is where I discovered my first drill press and built, and I have it around here, this accordion thing that grabs. It's like the Little Rascals punching boxing glove. And we even did a whole video where I built one and showed this piece. I still have the first thing I ever built in a shop class. And I really specifically remember being in that shop class and somebody was like, dude, you can drill quarters. And I was like, what? Because quarters were metal. And to a kid, that's like, adamantium. And we like put a quarter on the drill press and like drilled a hole through it and was like, this can't be okay, but boy, does it feel great. Just that bit of consciousness about the ways in which you can manipulate the world with a tool. Later on, 7th and 8th grade, middle school, they had home economics class, and that's where I learned to sew. It's where I did my first baking. It was spectacular. Sewing is still, sewing and typing are maybe the two most important skills I came out of all 12 years of school with. And writing as well. In high school, I had 2 art teachers, Miss Masumian and Mr. Benton. Both were really excellent. Both taught me a lot about different materials. Miss Sumian gave me an assignment to make things only out of corrugated cardboard, to make a thing only out of corrugated cardboard. And this is part of, like, I feel like my superhero origin story is my dad took me to the art store to buy unbroken sheets of 24 by 36 sheets of cardboard. And like, when all you've ever seen is a cardboard box, someone handing you a pristine, unsullied piece of cardboard is like, it's like a blank piece of marble. I ended up making 9 things to satisfy this one assignment. But it was Mr. Benton that really specifically kind of let me loose. So in the 80s, your average high school had a lot of money. Had a lot of money to spend on the students. And I think, if I remember correctly, Sleepy Hollow High School had one of the highest student expenditure rates of any public school in the upper New York area. So he had all sorts of things. He had an engraving machine. He had vacuum form machine. He had all of these processes and would just let me play with any one of them. I would go to the shelf and be like, what's this? And he'd be like, all right, you can work on that today. That kind of freedom was amazing and really, really, there's a secondary aspect to it, which is lovely. Because on one level, you know, you're an art teacher, you've got this student who's bright and excited, you want to foment that. So you give them some freedom. But in the giving of the freedom, you're also telling them that you deserve some freedom. That your mind, you could stretch the elbows of your mind a bit here. And that you're worth doing that with. So someone once said, you know, that all meditation practice is initiated by your teacher just to keep you out of his hair. And there's some truth to that. But also, like, again, being given that freedom, I felt the message in that freedom. I felt the peer respect of another creator in that freedom. And I felt that with other wonderful teachers too. I had some great drama teachers through the course of middle school and high school, who also saw things that I could bring to the equation. I got very lucky in my teaching, in the teachers that I encountered. I had some great art teachers, I had some great shop teachers, and I had some great science teachers, and I had some great English teachers. I feel like it's important to name them. My science teachers that I loved were Dan Frere and Nicholas Demetrius Zimopoulos. My English teachers that I loved, Mrs. Gortzema and Mrs. Levine, Mr. DeBarros and Miss Parada. My art teachers, Mr. Benton, Mr. Albano, and the White Plains Community Center. I spent several summers taking every class that the White Plains Community Center had on offer, whether it was carving in soapstone or making stuff out of clay, making pottery, making wood stuff, turning bowls. I did all of that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I wanted to briefly mention that you could become a tested member. I know, everybody is competing for you to become a member of their thing. What I want to express to you is that the Tested membership has become such an important part of the Tested family. We get tremendous feedback from the Tested members, and they expand the stories that we can tell and the things that we have access to, and you can become a part of it right now by clicking on the link below. See you in the chat.